This is a persuasive speech about why voting in today's society is essential. Did you know voter turnout in the United States fluctuates in national elections? In recent elections, about 60% of the voting eligible population votes during presidential election years, and about 40% votes during the midterm elections. Turnout is lower for your odd year, primary, and local elections. The first idea I would like to make is about turnout rates. Turnout rates across the U.S. are low. In the 2012 presidential election, 76% of eligible Minnesotans cast ballots, whereas only 45% of eligible Hawaiians did. According to fairvote.org, the following affect voter turnout rates. Electoral competitiveness. One of the most important factors is the competitiveness of the presidential election in each state. Overall, 66% of eligible voters turned out to the polls in the nation's 12 most competitive states in 2012, but only 57% did in the nation's 39 other states. Election type. Low turnout is most pronounced in primary elections, off-year elections for state legislators, and local elections. For example, a 2013 study of 340 mayor elections in 144 U.S. cities from 1996 to 2012 found that voter turnout in those cities averaged at 25.8%. In many cities, mayors have been elected with a single-digit turnout. For example, turnout in Dallas, 1999 mayor election was a mere 5%. Voting laws, voter registration laws, voter identification laws, early voting, and polling place accessibility can also affect voter turnout, though not always in the ways that we might expect. For example, the introduction of early voting, which was intended to make voting easier and increase turnout, appears to have actually decreased turnout. Demographics, which includes age, race and ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status. In the aggregate, voters tend to be older, wealthier, more educated, and whiter than non-voters. Young people are much less likely to vote than older ones. From 1972 to 2012, citizens 18 to 29 years old turned out at a rate 15 to 20% lower than citizens 30 years and older. Voter turnout also varies by race and ethnicity. In 2012, turnout rates among eligible white and black voters was 64.1% and 66.2% respectively, while it was only 48% and 47.3% among Latino and Asian voters respectively. The 2012 election was the first presidential election since Reconstruction ended in which black turnout exceeded white turnout. Women's voters' turnout has surpassed men's in every presidential election since 1980. In the 2012 election, 7.8 more women than men voted. Interesting enough, older women are actually less likely to vote than older men. In 2008, 72.2% of men, 75% and older voted, compared to only 64.9% of women that age. Wealthy Americans vote at much higher rates than those of lower socioeconomic status. During the 2008 presidential election, only 41% of eligible voters making less than $15,000 a year voted, compared to 78% of those making $150,000 a year or more. Studies have shown that this difference in turnout affects public policy. Politicians are more likely to respond to this turnout effect, to respond to the desires of their wealthy constituents other than their poor constituents, in part because more of their wealthy constituents vote. Constituents, sorry. Increasing turnouts will help our society further better. Fair Vote advocates a number of systematic electoral reforms that reverse the contextual reasons for low turnout. Fair representation, voting for legislative elections, would allow for outcomes that better represent the diverse beliefs in the electorate, and could therefore combat the low voter turnout that we see in many winner-take-all plurality districts where the choices are limited. A national popular vote for president, which would make every vote in every state equally valuable in every selection, would expand presidential campaigns from just 10 states to all 50. As voter turnout is markedly lower in states that receive no presidential campaign attention, the reallocation of campaign resources to include non-battleground states would likely increase turnout in those states. Instant runoff voting for other single-seat offices like mayor and governor would better represent the views of a third party and independent voters, as more candidates would be inclined to run. Therefore, voters who do not feel that their views are represented in a two-way party race would turn to the polls to support their preferred candidate. Universal voter registration would modernize voter registration in the United States, making government responsible for maintaining accurate and complete voter rolls shifting our system from its current opt-in structure to opt-out structure. Voting is essential in today's society because it is our God-given right, the only way our voices will be heard. America is a democracy. Dictionary.com states, a democracy is a system of government by the whole population or all the eligible members of state, typically through elected representatives. We the people are responsible for electing those individuals. We the people are benefiting the most from this action of voting. Candidates want our votes and are willing to go that extra mile to meet certain needs. According to massvote.org, there remains wide gaps between those who do not vote, which undermines representative democracy. Much of this gap is due to communities left uninformed about elections. Voter participation is a learned activity. A functioning democracy is critical to our nonprofit goals and civic missions. I read a blog called Ask Your Dad, Pretending to Know the Answer 2010. Republicans are feared. Being in a Republican state discourages people from voting. Some things may get better under one or worse under the other, but I believe it is safe to say that both candidates want what is best for the country. They just disagree on what is best. It is easy to get wrapped up in the fear of the other, that our motivation for voting doesn't come from our belief in one candidate, but our fear from the other opponent. Why vote? Local elections, constitutional amendments, and state referendums. Education, obligation, and a piece of transition of power. Get out and vote on November 8, 2016. Your voice will be heard.